Thank you for those comments, Mr. President, for the question. I'm wondering if you plan to ask Congress for the remaining $350 billion in bailout money, and in terms of timing, if you do that before you leave office, or are you motivated in part to make life politically easier for President-elect Obama?
I have talked to the President-elect about this subject, and I told him that if he felt that he needed the $350 billion, I would be willing to ask for it. In other words, if he felt like it needed to happen on my watch. The best course of action, of course, is to convince enough members of the Senate to vote positively for the request, and you know, that's all I can share with you, because that's all I know.
So you haven't made the request yet?
Well, he hadn't asked me to make the request yet, and I don't intend to make the request unless he specifically asks me to make it. He is, you know, I think this is my third conversation with him, and I generally mean what I say. I wish him all the very best. I found him to be a very smart and engaging person, and that lunch the other day was interesting, to have two guys who are nearly 85, two 62-year-olders, and a 47-year-old. So kind of the classic generational statement. And one common area, in at least the four of us, we all had different circumstances and experiences, but one thing is we've all experienced what it means to assume the responsibility of the presidency. And President-elect Obama is fixing to do that. And he'll get sworn in, and they'll have the lunch and all the deal up there on Capitol Hill, and then he'll come back and go through the inauguration, and then he'll walk in the Oval Office. And there'll be a moment when the responsibilities of the president land squarely on his shoulders. Toby. Yeah, we'll get everybody.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you believe that the Gaza conflict will have ended by the time you leave office? Do you approve of the way that Israel has conducted it, and why were you unable to achieve the peace deal that you had sought?
Remind me of the 3 points, will you? Because I'm getting a little older.
Will it end by the time you leave office? Do you approve of Israel's
I hope so. I'm for a sustainable ceasefire. And a definition of a sustainable ceasefire is that Hamas stops firing rockets into Israel. And there will not be a sustainable ceasefire if they continue firing rockets. I happen to believe the choice is Hamas's to make. And we believe that the best way to ensure that there is a sustainable ceasefire is to work with Egypt to stop the smuggling of arms into the Gaza that enables Hamas to continue to fire rockets. And so countries that supply weapons to Hamas have got to stop. And the international community needs to continue to pressure them to stop providing weapons. Hamas, obviously, if they're interested in a sustainable ceasefire, needs to stop, arming. And then, of course, countries contingent to the Gaza need to work to stop the smuggling. And it's a difficult task. I mean, there's tunnels and, great opportunities for people who want to continue to try to disrupt democracy to provide the weapons to do so. Second part of your question, please, ma'am.
Do you approve of Israeli conduct in this?
I think Israel has a right to defend herself. Obviously, in any of these kinds of situations, I would hope that she would continue to be mindful of innocent folks, and that they help, expedite the delivery of humanitarian aid. And third, why haven't we achieved peace?
Why were you unable?
That's a good question. It's been a long time since they've had peace in the Middle East. Step one is to have a vision for what peace would look like. And in 2002, on the steps of the Rose Garden, I gave a speech about a two-state solution. Two states, two democracies living side by side in peace, and we have worked hard to advance that idea. First thing is to convince all parties that the two states were necessary for peace. And one thing that's happened is that most people in the Middle East now accept the two-state solution as the best way for peace. Most Palestinians want their own state, and most Israelis understand there needs to be a democracy on their border in order for there to be long-lasting peace. The challenge, of course, has been to lay out the conditions so that a peaceful state can emerge. In other words, helping the Palestinians in the West Bank develop security forces, which we have worked hard to do over the past years. And those security forces are now becoming more efficient, and Prime Minister Fayyad is using them effectively. The challenge is to help the Palestinians develop a democracy. And a vibrant economy in there that will help lead to democracy. And the challenge, of course, is always complicated by the fact that people are willing to murder to stop the advance of freedom. And so the Hamas, or for that matter Al-Qaeda, or other extremist groups, are willing to use violence to prevent free states from emerging. And that's the big challenge. And so the answer is, will this ever happen? I think it will. And I know we have advanced the process. Suzanne.
And
finally got your name right after how many years? 6 years? 8 years. You used to be known as Suzanne. Now you're Suzanne.
Thank you.
I'm George.
Your 2002 State of the Union address, you identified U.S. threats as an axis of evil: Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. Iraq is relatively calm. North Korea no longer on the terrorist threat list. How would you define if, in fact, there is still an axis of evil, and what is the greatest and most urgent threat when it comes to security that Barack Obama has to deal with?
The most urgent threat that he'll have to deal with, and other presidents after him will have to deal with, is an attack on our homeland. I wish I could report that's not the case, but there's still an enemy out there that would like to inflict damage on America, Americans. And that'll be the major threat. North Korea is still a problem. There is a debate in the intel community about how big a problem they are, but one of my concerns is that there might be a highly enriched uranium program, and therefore it is really important that out of the six-party talks comes a strong verification regime. In other words, in order to advance our relations with North Korea, the North Korean government must honor the commitments it made to allow for strong verification measures to be in place to ensure that they don't develop a highly enriched uranium program, for example. So they're still dangerous, and Iran is still dangerous. Yeah.